Welcome to the Rustic Garden. Today I want to talk about watering your plants when you're on vacation, just give you a tip for that, and also how to give them a feeding of Epsom salt and fertilizers just to get them in shape and ready to continue growing into September through the fall. Today is August 13th. I was away for a week, and the biggest tip I have is to really bring a sprinkler into the center of your container area. Move all your plants around the sprinkler, making sure, do a test run and make sure the sprinkler covers all your plants. You can see I brought in other containers, dropped them right down there, and then just have somebody come in and turn the sprinkler on every other day until you get back. Now, if you're gone for a couple of days, you might be able to put trays under your containers, fill them with water, and that will work, but I was gone 7 days. And in the high heat of August, if your plants just dry out one time, you're going to damage the root system, you're going to damage the plant, you're going to damage its ability to bear fruit. And you don't want that to happen. Now, Jacob, who did the watering for me, one of the neighborhood kids here, did a great job. But we also had rain on top of that. So a lot of water really flushed through these pots. And some of the damage, like right in there, can come from too much water. But I would rather have too much water than too little water. So we're going to feed these Epsom salts, which I recommend, but I don't recommend it as a miracle cure. You don't need to do it weekly, you don't need to do it monthly. 1 or 2 times a year, especially in containers, is helpful because it adds in some of the macronutrients, the second level of the macronutrients, the magnesium and the sulfur, and it's not going to hurt your plant. I'll show you how to do that. I'm also going to give these a drink of quarter strength chemical fertilizer because it will cover everything that you need. Chemical fertilizers will not harm your plants. They will not harm you, especially if you don't abuse them and you use them in a way that I show you. If you don't want to use the chemical fertilizer, go ahead and use a fish emulsion or use some sort of composted tea or something along those lines. So let's get started with cleaning this up and getting these plants fed, and I'll show you how I mix my Epsom salts and how I use it on the plants. And the tomatoes are doing really well. This is one strategy I have for tomatoes, is plant them at different times, because while some of mine are dying out in the garden and I'm removing a lot today, the container tomatoes are really taking off. So this one will get restaked. We'll get it fed with the products that I told you we'd feed them with. But I wanted to just show you real quick the tomatoes and then show you how I fix them up. There's a plant right in here that needs to be staked up. It's doing well. This one needs to have some of the leaves trimmed off. That's not disease, that's just dieback. It's doing well. The patio choice on here, they're determinate varieties. They need to be picked. Some of them split with all the water we were getting, but they're going to be cleaned out of there. This plant needs to be staked up, some of the leaves cut back and fed. So let's take care of the tomatoes. Oh, one more plant. The plant over here will be removed, and this is my pear plant that just does not do well in the heat. That will be removed too. So here's the container deck garden all cleaned up. Let's just start right over here. The ruby red Swiss chard is a great plant to grow in a container, 5-gallon container. This is a shady area right here, so the chard's not so great tasting in the hot July and August months, but if you tuck it in where the shade is, it's going to grow very nicely, and it's going to taste a lot better than being in the full sun. Here's one of the plants that was actually broke the stake that it was on. I've just tied it up and it looks pretty good. That's all going to get fed. All the scraps from cutting the plants back. I cut back a whole lot. Took out the damaged leaves, raised the Roma tomato right there. Looks pretty good. Cut out the leaves of, I think that's a Bradley tomato. Yeah, Bradley tomato. Cut back snapdragons, the basil, lifted up Mr. Stripey, removed the yellow leaves. These tomatoes I'm going to pull out, but I'm going to give them a little bit more time to let the cherry tomatoes ripen. And it's just kind of sad. They were doing fairly well. In that 1 week period that I was gone, that's when they were all kind of ripening, and then just lots of water came and messed them up. Those are sweet potatoes right there. They're doing very, very, very well. Leaving the flowers on the basil right there. I like it more ornamental. There's all kinds of different basils mixed in there. Planted a hops plant right into this crescent garden self-watering container, and that plant's going to get 12 feet. I'm going to see how this container does next year with a massive vine in it. This was my tiny Tim tomatoes, and they've reseeded, so I'll let those grow, and they're going to be ready and ripe come the middle of September. So when you are in mid-August, in mid-July, if you want to give your plants, especially your container plants, some Epsom salts, you can do that, or Epsom salt, however you want to say it. You just want to buy a basic brand. You don't need anything fancy. It's all the same. Epsom salt has magnesium and sulfur in it, and magnesium and sulfur are your second level macronutrients. Your macronutrients, first level, are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, N, P, and K, and then your second level macronutrients, which your plants need a whole lot less of, are magnesium, sulfur, and calcium. And you don't need to overuse this. I wouldn't use it weekly, maybe once or twice in a gardening season. And you basically put in 1 tablespoon to 2 tablespoons per gallon of water. And in here is a 2-gallon container. I put in 2 tablespoons of the Epsom salt. And then I like using the chemical fertilizers late in August because it just gives your plants everything that they need. And you've seen my videos. I use fish emulsion, I use organic setups to set up the container soil, and I don't mind using all the products, at any given time. Chemical fertilizers will not hurt you or your plants if you don't overuse or abuse it. So the NP and K in here is a 15-30-15, which is too high. So I use it at about quarter strength, which changes the numbers on here to more like a 5-10-5 NP and K fertilizer, which is what I want to get to my plants. It also has, where is it, over on this side, a lot of other micronutrients in there, and that's just something you don't often get in your organic fertilizers, or if you do, you have to kind of get different organic fertilizers. And if you're on a budget, this is like $5 and you can feed a lot of plants with it. If you have more money, you can buy the organic fertilizers, whatever you'd like to do. But I just want to stress, chemical fertilizers will not hurt you or your plants. Everything on the earth is a chemical, including your organic fertilizers. So here's my 2-gallon watering container. It has, I think I put in, I don't even remember, I don't know, 1 to 2 tablespoons of the Epsom salt per gallon. And I cut the NP and K back so that it's really around the 5-10-5 NP and K. You just don't need to overdo it. A lot of people like to say, well, how do you water it? Do you put in a whole gallon? Here it is. My Bradley tomato, soak it down for about a second. That's plenty for the foliar feed. These are water-soluble fertilizers, so the leaves will absorb some, and this is pretty much how I do it. So that's enough feed for the Bradley. The Roma type, again, just soak it down real quick. Give it a good drink. This is my oregano because I use that in the garden. I use that in the kitchen. I don't like covering the leaves with fish emulsion or chemical fertilizer, so I just feed it that way. Flowers, basil, same thing. I don't necessarily want to cover them. Just pour it into the container. And that's generally how I do it. My strawberry, nothing crazy, but 2 gallons of the fertilizers with the chemical fertilizers and the Epsom salt really feed about this much in the way that I do it. So I'll fill that up again and I will hit the rest of the garden. And the same thing, where I'm not harvesting the leaves or the fruit, I will pour it right onto the plant. If not, I'll go right to the base of the plant. And that's how I give my plants a nice feeding mid-August to really boost them up and get them growing and lasting into September. Hope you enjoyed the video. And again, if you don't like the chemical fertilizers, go ahead, use fish emulsion or use some sort of organic fertilizer. Your container soil isn't as diverse biologically as your soil out in the garden. So when you use organic fertilizers, sometimes you need microbes in the soil to break that fertilizer down depending on what you're using. And it takes a long time. The chemical fertilizers are immediately available. The water-soluble fertilizers are immediately available to your plants. And this is just a great way to get your plants fed quickly. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please check out my seed shop at www.therustedgarden.com. Thanks.